In progress. All right, Parker. Obviously, we're chatting today because the Cougs are headed back to the Final Four. I believe I read that they've been there six times without reaching the final, which is the most of any program, which was kind of surprising to me. But before we get into that, what have you liked about this Houston team so far here in the tournament?
Well, there's gonna be five slamma jam folks get upset about missed shots back in the 80s, but this team's been like a very culture-driven team, very defensive minded, next man up, whoever's night is whoever's night. It's really been a really cool thing to see this year.
That's awesome. Who are some of the guys, for people who are, haven't been paying attention, maybe they're just going to tune into the Final Four. Who are some guys that people should be watching out for on the Cougars?
LJ Cryer's the high points per game guy. He's a transfer as of 2 years ago, transfer from Baylor, a local kid for Houston from Katy. He won a national championship as a bench guy his freshman year at Baylor. He's won four Big 12 titles between the two schools, and now he's trying to get it done at Houston. Will be the first ever player to win a national title at two different schools. Emmanuel Sharp's a great shooter. Jawan Roberts is a power forward that's kind of a bruiser type. Lots of guys that are easy to fall in love with, and I throw in Milos Uzan because he had the play of the Sweet 16 against Purdue the other night, so it's hard to forget about him too.
I was going to ask you about that play and that game. What was kind of going through your head as you're seeing them battle Purdue? Purdue's obviously a tested tournament team, and things were maybe looking a little shaky towards the end of the second half, but obviously they pulled it out. What do you think? What was your reaction, and what do you think helped propel them to that win?
Yeah, so Houston and Purdue were playing in Indianapolis, which is like 70 miles from Purdue's campus. Very much, I mean, people would probably tell you it probably wasn't like it was on campus in Purdue, but it was definitely a very Purdue heavy crowd. And Houston kind of felt that down towards the stretch of the game. It kept it close. And when they called timeout, I knew Samson was going to have something up his sleeve. And the interesting thing about it is that they ran a play they've run all year long. They just made an adjustment for how Purdue covers the inbounds pass. And when one guy peeled off, Milos Uzan stepped right in and had an easy, almost dunk, we'll call it a layup, there to steal the game with just under 2 seconds. I mean, truly impeccable timing and forethought to just add a quick little tweak to something you've been doing all year. It was awesome.
Cool. And then, you obviously mentioned that, you felt good about Kelvin Sampson drawing something up there. Has he been with the team? I know he's hasn't been with the team for a long time. Has he been with them on any of the previous Final Four runs?
They went in 2021. 2021, they went to the Final Four, actually in Indianapolis, and they had Quentin Grimes, a young Marcus Sasser, a couple guys are in the league now. And no like NBA All-Star, I don't guess, but some guys are in the league now. Ladiki Giroux is a Louisiana kid, and he's, I guess, in the G League somewhere now. Samson's here for all that. He got here to Houston about 11 years ago and really kind of revived a program that had been at the bottom for a minute. And it's taken a long time, but now we're at two Final Fours in 5 years, and it feels pretty good.
So I guess then my next question is, what do you think? What do you feel is different about this team compared to, maybe 2021 or other teams that haven't been able to, get over the hump and win a championship?
I feel like, and we talked about on the show I hosted, is that Houston's team really has a host of about eight guys that can all have it can be their night on any night, right? And so like it was Milos Uzan against Purdue, but it wasn't him again. It was Manuel Sharp against Tennessee, but it was LJ Cryer against Gonzaga, but it was Jawan Roberts against Arizona earlier this year. Like it's really just any number of guys can come in and make their impact and kind of win the game for you. I don't know that they've got anyone that's like a lottery pick or maybe even a first round pick. I would pick a few other guys in the first round, but I'm probably a little biased. But the idea of it can just be anybody on any night, and it continues to be anybody on any night, has really been kind of at the headline of this team, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because kind of leads into my next question. Obviously, y'all are playing Duke. They've been, maybe the toughest team in the tournament, probably them in Florida, kind of neck and neck. And talking about a balanced scoring attack, Cooper Flag he had an okay Elite Eight. I think he finished with 16 points, but he, shot 6 for 16. So, but in that same sense, you had other guys stepping up. So what do you think the Cougars have to do to kind of tame the Blue Devils and give themselves the best shot to win that game?
They got to control the game's pace. Houston plays at one of the slowest paces in America. They like to work for their own good shot, and then defensively they force late shot clock shots. I don't think they can't play a track meet, but that's very much what Duke wants to do. They want to get them to scoring in the 80s, 90s, even 100, whereas Houston rather play down in the 60s. If Houston can control the pace, keep control of the glass, and make this a low possession game, I think they got a really good chance here because that's just kind of what they've been doing all year long. And I could see that frustrating a young team. You mentioned Cooper Flag, but a lot of freshmen at Duke that might not be used to someone imposing their will on them in that kind of way. It's been a while since it's happened to them.
So you mentioned the rebounding, and I was going to kind of ask, how can Houston control the pace of the game? Is it, dominating the glass? Obviously, defense is going to, play a big factor in that. What do you think are some of the things that they'll need to do in order for the game to be played at the pace that they want?
Yeah, I think when you look at Duke, a lot of people see the height that jumps off board. I think the shortest guy they really play is 6'5", 6'7" Knippel, and Cooper, I think, is listed at 6'10" himself. They got a 7'2" guy down low. And what Houston does is they, for Samson's tenure, have found guys like 6'9" ish and then have like crazy wingspan. So you see like JoJo Tugler, the starting center, is listed at 6'8" and change, but has a 7'6" wingspan to make up for it. And so the thought is like having agile athletes that can chase the ball down, double team on the perimeter, and then like make up for what they lack in height with length and hustle. Houston's been great on the glass all year long. They've played some big teams like Kansas and stuff like that. I don't know the height's going to intimidate them so much. I think it's going to be what you'll see a lot of is Houston will have a lot of times they intentionally deflect rebounds and they just kind of keep the ball alive, almost like a volleyball play till someone eventually grabs it. And I think that'll kind of be how they fight on the glass with a tall and long Duke team. I'm not worried about it, but I think that's got to be the strategy to go with.
You mentioned obviously last round in Indianapolis, basically a home game for Purdue. Well, the Final Four, of course, is in San Antonio, which not next door neighbors with Houston, but within the state of Texas, obviously. Do you think that's going to help them out at all? Do you think they're going to have any sort of hometown, home crowd kind of effect in that game?
Man, they're sure talking about it. I will say the interesting stat I saw on that was it is the Houston, San Antonio, Dallas have all hosted Final Fours a number of times. It's the first time a Final Four in Texas has had a team from Texas in it. Obviously, New Orleans has had a handful of Texas teams that's nearby, but I think it's a little bit different. They're really hyping up to paint San Antonio red and drive down from on I-10 and that kind of stuff. I will say Duke's a national fan base in a way that, frankly, even Auburn and Florida are not. And so it'll be interesting to see how they travel, or if they even really have to travel. A lot of T-shirt fan kind of people that just like the Duke brand right across the country. I feel pretty good about what Houston's going to have there. There's all kinds of deals and NIL things like cash back to try and get people to get their tickets through certain vendors and whatever there in Houston. I'd imagine there's a lot of red in the stands, though. I would be confident enough to say that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Duke brand, and even as I was asking that question, I was kind of thinking that to myself, like, well, there's kind of Duke fans everywhere. Just for me, I grew up in New Jersey, and I remember friends coming to school with like Duke sweatshirts on, and I'd be like, what's your connection to Duke? I never liked
Right. You've never been to
that.
the state of North Carolina. You got a Duke sweatshirt. I'm like,
Right. Yeah, whatever. But man, Parker, I feel like that's kind of all I got for you, unless, what's, maybe one other thing that maybe you feel like you should mention that people should know heading into the Final Four this weekend.
Um, I don't mean to make it like a favorites get the good whistle or whatever. The other thing I thought about after answering that question earlier is a whistle could dictate this game. It's a one game sample, not a 7 game series. And Duke likes to play with a high scoring, finesse, shooting a lot of free throws, getting to the line. Houston likes to make it kind of a rock fight. And if in a 1 game sample, that can really shift things. You got to win however you got to win. So the champion will have to have won multiple kinds of ways. But if you're talking about 1 game, that could also throw things off. I thought about that after the fact earlier.
Yeah, no, I mean that's so true. The one game, ball doesn't bounce your way on 1 or 2 possessions. It,
Yeah.
it can be everything. It's crazy. But yeah, like I said, I think that's all I got. So Parker, appreciate you hopping on with me here tonight. And we'll all be watching with bated breath on Saturday, I'm sure.
Yeah, go Cougs, man, go Cougs. And this we're still recording. This is CBS. What's the deal?
Yep, CBS 19.
CBS 19. Awesome. We'll go Cougs on
So
CBS 19.
awesome. Yeah, maybe we'll check in, knock on wood if the Cougs have a favorable outcome on Saturday.
Yeah, there we go. There we
Sweet.
go.
Awesome. Thanks again, Parker. Appreciate it.
For sure. Take care, man.